Hey everybody, here's the second in a series about positive communication. I'm going to jump right into one of the things that I made a lot of mistakes on and have gotten a little bit better on, and hopefully it'll be helpful to you. Um, what I'm going to call this is basically having your communication be consistent with your values. um, and to get drill down like one more layer and be specific about that. Um, when I first started interacting with parents, as I said, as a club swimming coach, um, I well, probably for one thing, I've always been somebody that's under communicator. So communicating consistently is really important, even when people aren't reading all of your messages. To have a message to point to or have something for people to reference, that's really helpful. But um, I realized well into coaching this team that I was I knew what I valued. I knew that it was really important to me, the experience that kids were having on my team beyond competitive results and beyond the really sport specific stuff. But 99% of what I was communicating with parents about was very sport specific stuff. So I ended up with quite a dissonance in terms of um, I knew that I valued all this stuff, and I knew the way that I conducted it that I valued all sorts of other stuff, but um, I wasn't communicating that directly to the parents when I was sending them a message. And so you end up with um, parents that don't really know you very well, and when they meet you down the line, all they have is these messages to draw upon to form an impression of you. And that impression um, may be heavily skewed from who you are and what you value. Another really specific thing that I had when I was doing this was I sent out a weekly plan. It's a pretty typical swim coach thing to do, although I had never done it until I became a club swimming coach. And I didn't like sending out this plan, basically because I thought few people read it, and um, I felt like it really sort of locked me into doing certain things, and I complained about it plenty. Where I got to eventually was it wasn't so important that I sent out the weekly plan just as anybody else would, but that I used this sort of weekly communication as a template to give people the information that I thought they would need to take part in the coming week. So in the beginning, um, this thing was very dry. It had very sort of very specific information about when practice was and what kind of practice it was going to be. You know, was it going to be a dry land practice? Was it going to be a swim practice? What kind of swimming practice? We're going to do some sprints, that kind of stuff. And over time, it came to include more information about um, what we might talk about in a given week, what would be some of the sort of broader themes, and ultimately what kind of stuff um, was I focused on that if we had to um, stop swimming the next day, we could still continue that work, right? That it had what kind of stuff were we engaged in that had nothing to do with swimming whatsoever. So I think that's a really important consideration for you as you look at your communication, and I hope you, if you're going to find yourself in a coaching situation where you got to communicate a lot with parents, that you communicate specifically your values and not just sporting information. Okay. Next time, I'm going to come with another tip of something I've learned from the flip side, from being a parent trying to communicate with teachers and people that work with my kids.